No, because I have a Ethernet cable here, and I told you last time the problem was I'm not equipped for that one right now. It is what it is. Anyway, shall we go? Okay, 1 second. This is the Android Buffet Podcast, episode number 566, recorded Thursday, December 9th, 2021, in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Android Buffet Podcast. I'm now back at home. Yeah, last week I wasn't at home. Remember there? Yes. And I'm staying here for a bit. Well, let's see. I told my parents I would come back and try once again to help them deal with their apartment situation next month for a few days. So I'm here through next year at least. Yeah, but what do you define in a time? That's a monetary bit. So how do you define a temporal bit? So I'm going to be in New York for the rest of the year, and then, as I said, I'm going to go try to help them clean up their apartment, assuming that the guy actually does something. I was there on Monday and Tuesday. He promised he'd show up to talk to them on Tuesday. He didn't, and he apparently sent them a message saying that he's going to resume work tomorrow. I'll be watching. I put a camera there. I'm skeptical, being as he has not done any work in over a month, and it should take like 4 days for him to finish this. Anyway, so that's my continual problem there. But here I had a problem when I came back, which I thought is amusing, so I will share it so that you may be amused. You being all the listeners as well as you, Jerry, who haven't heard about this. I believe I told you about the treadmill and the fire. I got a treadmill. There was the one that had the Android controller in it that I tried to hack. And a few weeks ago, I was doing some walking on it, and it started to smoke. I didn't mention this? I thought I had. Anyway, so I tried to. It was purchased through Costco, so I tried to get a warranty exchange, since they have a good warranty. And they arranged to pick up the old treadmill on Wednesday. So I came back on Tuesday night. I got into my apartment at about 1 a.m. and they were supposed to come Wednesday afternoon. So I was very surprised when I showed up and there was something at my door at 1 in the morning. No, I arrived, the flight was a little late getting into New York, and then I had to get a cab from the airport to my apartment. And when the cab dropped me off, there was this really large, gigantic box in front of the door. Guess what was in the box? You're not guessing. No. I thought this would have been obvious. There was a treadmill-sized box outside of my house. With it. I thought that was a treadmill. Well, what is it? Well, I haven't opened the box, but it does say treadmill on the side. So Yeah. So they had said that they weren't going to send a new treadmill until they picked up the old treadmill. So they sent me a treadmill. So okay, fine. So it's sitting in. I shoved it inside, and have not had time or energy to actually put it together. I figured that's more like a weekend thing, especially since the instructions say that it's a two-person job and there's only one of me. So yeah, I think I did it mostly myself last time. So, but that was last year, so who remembers? But so I thought that they came on Wednesday. They picked up the old treadmill. They still haven't communicated anything about shipping anything to me, even though they clearly did. So I thought that was the end of it. So today, Thursday, is the day that I'm supposed to be physically in the office as opposed to working at home. Now that they want me to do that again. So I came home from the office, and guess what was sitting in front of my door? Yep. So I now have two treadmills sitting right inside the door because I just sort of pushed it with my knees and pushed it inside. Uh, on Wednesday. So on Tuesday, sometime in the evening, they dropped off a treadmill, which I didn't see because I wasn't there until the wee hours of the following morning. So on Tuesday, a treadmill arrived, and on Thursday, a treadmill arrived. So should I worry about another treadmill arriving tomorrow? I thought two. I thought two treadmills was funny enough. You're telling me that two treadmills is not amusing? Yeah, well, I was trying to figure out what to do about this, and since you're not the first person I've talked to this evening, I asked a few people. I did get one interesting suggestion: start a gym. No, start a gym. But no, there was one person who suggested that I should try to put together one of the treadmills before I call them about taking one of them back, as in make sure something works before I do that. And that makes logical sense to me. So if I'm going to put it together on the weekend, I'll call them on Monday after I've confirmed that at least one of these things works. Because if one of them doesn't work, then and the other one does work, then I know which one I want them to take back. Seemed to make logical sense. But either way, the last time somebody sent me something I didn't want and didn't want to pick it up, I ended up with an extra one. I don't know what I'm going to do with an extra treadmill. That was somebody's suggestion. I don't know if I have enough room for a gym, but yeah. I suppose having excess treadmills might be an amusing problem to have, but anyway, so I'm back and I can start resuming some of my home automation and other projects here. I left a few when I left somewhat abruptly, so I have piles and piles of stuff to do. And I need to make those piles lower because tomorrow's garbage night. But so a few things to talk about on the news side of things, because once again, it's the end of the year and there isn't that much going on every week. I read the same sources religiously, and not as many things popped up for me. Yeah. Oh, by the way, I also ended up with two Lenovo smart clocks. Well, while I was in Florida, I ordered. I've bought them before. They Walmart had a $24.88 deal, one smart light bulb and a Lenovo Smart Clock 2 for $24.88. And I said, okay, fine. I'll buy one and leave it on the nightstand in the place I was staying with in Florida because that's a nice little thing to have on the nightstand. It's like a Lenovo Art Display or a Nest Hub, but it's like 4 inches. It doesn't play video, but it does all of the Google Assistant things and audio, and it mostly acts as a clock, and it has a background clock face that can do photos. So it's a nice little nightstand thing. I figured for $24 and they throw in a light bulb, why not? So originally they were showing it as 35, and then it went down to 25. So they hadn't yet shipped it, so I called them and said, "You haven't shipped it yet. You brought it down by $10. Can you give me $10?" They said, no, but we can cancel your booking, your order for this, and you can do another one. So I said, that seems like a lot of work for you guys, but if that makes you happy, fine. So they did that, and then 2 of them showed up the next day. I called them. They told me to keep it. I don't think that's going to happen with the treadmill, but so now I have this extra Lenovo smart clock, which is a device I actually recommend. It's a very niche device. But again, if you don't want a full hub on your nightstand and you want something that has no camera, can show some pictures, and acts as a generic Google device, it's a nice one. Oh, you've looked it up? Okay, it's for $24. Why not? That's the same price as a Nest Hub, the mini hub, excuse me, like the little pincushion size one. And it has a screen, so why not? So I did get one of those. And I still do have a Chromecast. And the Google Chromecast, I always get this wrong, it's Chromecast with Google TV. Apparently, one of the things that I've mentioned in the past is that it has this reputation for filling up space because it doesn't have that much onboard memory. And people have added a USB-C hub and then done remote memory to solve it. But apparently their latest update has actually freed up space and memory. So I guess they heard people and did something. Also, apparently, Google's investigating reports that people who sent in their Pixels for repairs through the mail-in Pixel repair service has led to photos on their phone being leaked and their accounts being hacked. Well, the thing is, if you send a phone in for repair, you're supposed to do a factory reset on it. But if your phone is broken, how do you do a factory reset? So, I had that problem when one of those phones expanded. I was worried I wouldn't be able to do one, and I'd have to send it in with all my accounts on it. Fortunately, I was able to get it running long enough to just sort of tell it to wipe everything. But still, you're sending a device that had your personal data on it to somebody else. So you expect that these companies have some sort of control to ensure that their employees do not abuse your trust. And Google is probably not doing this themselves. They probably outsourced it to an actual repair company, is my guess. And apparently they don't have enough controls. But even if you have a third-party outsourcer, it's still your reputation, not the third party's. So people don't really care. You can't say it isn't Google, it's Cheap Guy Repair Service Incorporated that's at fault. It doesn't matter. Google hired them. Anyway, so let's see what else we have. Oh, yes. The Amazon Echo systems will act as a sound detector for running water and beeping appliances. So they'll be able to alert you if... So they're now listening for more than just the wake word. Although I think it's an optional feature. Well, I have this with security cameras. There are cameras that will that are designed to alert you if they hear a smoke alarm. Although beeping I feel a little more comfortable with because it's like a noticeable noise. Running water sounds like you're running a little too much analysis on your sound. Because most smoke detectors and other things have a very distinctive beep. Well, again, I think this is a turn on, turn off feature. But this isn't the only thing that sort of concerns me. Verizon has decided they're going to override previous opt-out preferences and start collecting personal data of people who've already told them they don't want that. Unless you go and opt out again. Well, this is sort of the thing. There's this constant group of people who are always trying to get the government, and I'm saying this because I know your opinion of government regulation, to regulate and make companies legally forced to make things opt in instead of opt out when it comes to data collection. So essentially they can't pull this. But, on the other hand, this is a company who's already registered your preferences and doesn't like them, so they're essentially reversing them unless you keep going in. So they are deliberately trying to get around your intent. that you've already told them. Oh, well. Also, Verizon does not have the best history of protecting people's data. So send a note. Don't turn something on that you've already said you don't want on. Oh, you might miss the note. I think they're counting on people the other way around. Will miss the note that they don't want their data collected and let Verizon collect it. But anyway, again, annoys me. That's why I bought a VPN. Well, no, I set up my own WireGuard VPN, which I was talking about recently. But in addition to that, there was a great Black Friday deal on for less than $100, 5 years of VPN service. So I figured I should less than $100. Yeah, and this was 85% off. So I figured, I'd like to, in addition to running my own, I would like to have a service that I could do. And I figured if I paid for 5 years and once at a really steep discount, then I would have it and not have to worry about it. So I figured, splurged a bit. It wasn't an incredible splurge. Yeah, so I have that set up, and unfortunately, their app annoyed the heck out of me. I hate companies that create apps that do things that I. So the reason they have an app is so you can switch between their various geographic locations. And if you don't use the app, then you have to essentially set up a profile in this case, in the VPN manager for GNOME, which is what Fedora uses, which is my OS, for each geographic location. For some odd reason, I'd rather do that. I'd rather essentially do the work myself because I found that their app was annoying. It was always trying to get me to say that my endpoint was in France. I don't. Maybe they have more bandwidth in France at the moment, so I don't know. I don't. Well, I don't want all. I don't mind it being in some other, but I don't want it to start suggesting Google.fr every time I want to Google something. I've had this problem when I've been in other countries, where it's suggesting localized regional things. I do not mind companies knowing that I'm in the United States. I'm fine with them not knowing where in the U.S. But I'd like American localization for not everything, but for many things. Either way, I have my VPN. I don't run all my traffic through it, but I have it on essentially selectively. Also, the same VPN is configured in Firefox with an add-on, so I could actually selectively turn it on for specific sites and essentially route through. Thought it was a nice thing. So I'm prepared in the event that Verizon, who, while this is a wireless thing with the opt-out, I am a Verizon Fios customer because that's my internet service provider. I'm not currently a Verizon wireless customer. So I'm prepared in case they start monitoring my home. If you back to Amazon, apparently they are turning Fire TV devices into smart home dashboards. So I'm not really embedded in their ecosystem, but I wouldn't mind if this could be done on Android TV, so the Chromecast with Android TV. Then two, I would love it if at some point they made the Home Assistant app Android TV compatible. Can you imagine that? Imagine that your television can be a full-sized Home Assistant dashboard. You can't imagine that? No, they're talking about smart home dashboards for their smart home environment. No, I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying I want Google to do this exact same thing for their environment, and I want Home Assistant to create an app that can be installed to do the exact same thing. I'm talking about three different things. I'm happy Amazon is doing this for their smart home infrastructure. I want all the other options to do the exact same thing for their smart home infrastructure. So I think Google should copy this idea. And then I think Home Assistant should create an app that also copies this idea. Then we have everything. We have all the things. That would make me happy. I haven't looked recently. I mentioned that I follow the GitHub repository for the Home Assistant Android app. But I have not looked recently to see whether I saw that they were doing a bunch of things with Wear OS. I'm looking right now. I have not seen if anybody said anything about Android TV. I'm not seeing anything with a quick issue search, but that would make me very happy. Maybe I should open an issue. Or maybe I should let them finish up Wear OS. Well, you know, how many things... They're volunteers. How many things can they do? So anyway, the final thing that I found was just this interesting picture and article on somebody who hooked up a keyboard that was and a mouse controller that was originally used to launch missiles to their computer. So apparently they acquired this old thing on eBay, and it used to launch nuclear missiles. So it's a specialty keyboard with this attached trackball that they're now using. So this one had buttons like, buttons like transmit, abort, initiate. I think it's fun. I love it when people, you know, sort of find these old objects and sort of repurpose them. Anyway, so have you done anything of an interesting Android-y or home automation nature this week? Why do you think I came back to New York instead of spending as much more time with my parents, other than the fact that I have a job and they expect me to show up? Last year, remember, I spent 3 months hanging around with them in Florida. Sometimes I need peace and quiet, and when I was down there and they actually had their apartment, I could get that. When their apartment is a mess and we're all crowded into my grandparents' old apartment, it is not easy to get peace and quiet. So I'm back here, and I am going to spend the winter trying to clean up my various projects that I've been wanting to do. So a lot of them will pop up again. You've heard me mention a few of them, but there are ones involving home improvements and various technological improvements. And I have some automations I need to test in regard now that winter's coming, in regards to the heating and cooling system. Yes. I think I've mentioned a few of them that I've had to fix before. I made some changes to the sensors, so I have to update some of the automations. I mentioned I have an electric downspout from freezing over. Yeah, so I had an automation that I'd played with that when the temperature goes below freezing, it would engage it for a certain period of time. And when I changed out the sensors, I broke it, so I have to fix that. I have some of the temperature controls in my apartment. Now that Home Assistant has a generic hygrostat, I need to fix that integration because I had to move my humidifiers around. But I have the secondary problem that the humidifiers, there's no way that I figured out for Home Assistant to alert me when the humidifier tank is empty. I haven't figured out a technology solution for that. So I want to be reminded that the tank is empty, like with some sort of notification, so I will go fill it. and I can't really put a water. There are water sensors, and there are like vo- volume sensors, but the problem is I don't want to really drill a hole in the tank in order to put the sensor in. Yeah, well, I've had the current humidifiers I have do not leak, but I have had ones in the past that have like flowed all over my floor. That's why every humidifier I have is on like a tray, so if it starts to drip, the tray will at least stop it for a little while. Not indefinitely, because there's usually more water in the tank than the tray will hold. But so I'd like to try to solve that problem. So there's a tank, you put the tank in. You know what a humidifier looks like, I assume. They have those in Florida, right? Really? No, well, again, humidifiers are often used in dry environments. Florida is not. It's a very humid place. But I'm sure somebody uses one in Florida. Because air conditioning can dry out the air the same as heating. Yeah, in New York, yeah, the problem is, and I think I mentioned it, that heating often takes moisture out of the air and dries it out. So if you're, and but no, in New York where you're heating an apartment from like 40 degrees up to 60, it can make it really dry. So I need it because otherwise I wake up in the middle of the night with a dry mouth because there's just not enough moisture in the air. And I have my own sensitivities to that, so I do want to keep things. And I can't use some places they have whole house humidifying systems where they wire a humidifier into the central air. So when it's heating, it'll actually add moisture to the air through the same ducts. But remember, I don't have central heating, so can't solve that problem. I have hydronic heating, so same problem. But if anybody can think of an interesting way to know when your plug-in humidifier is out of water in a home assistant-y way, I'd like to hear it. I thought of weight sensors, but I don't want to deal with that. Like putting a weight sensor under the entire humidifier, that seems a bit much. But there must be a solution to this. Short of me finding, well, what would the solder do? No, what am I soldering into? Yeah, that was the weight idea I was talking about, where you'd put that under the. I'm not sure if I really want to deal with weight sensors. I thought about it. That's the only way I've thought of so far that would work and that would be relatively easy. That essentially I figure out what the thing weighs when the tank is empty. But I'm trying to think if there's a more elegant solution. There might not be. No, I'm saying there might not be. I'm just curious. How do gas tanks work? How do they know how much is in the gas tank? Yeah, so I wonder if there's a float solution. No, I'm sort of putting it out there because if I was ever to do a load sensor thing and do some soldering, which admittedly load sensors are probably the sort of soldering I can handle because when I used to solder a lot, my biggest problem was I would burn out boards. But soldering leads I can handle. I would just sort of burn out the IC chips on controller boards because I'm not very elegant with my soldering. Anyway, that said, it may be time to try soldering leads onto a load sensor. I thought about it a few times because that seems doable for me. But anybody thinks of anything, write in. I would enjoy your input. And of course, there's always more to think about. So next week I should have more, unless I'm caught up with the treadmill. Hopefully it doesn't hurt me. Yeah, that does what? To do what? What are you sensing is the question. Yeah, and what? Let me ask you a few questions. Do you want battery operated sensors or do you want a plug-in? Okay, I prefer plug-in also because I hate having to change batteries. So my recommendation is to build one. ESP home, ESP home or Tasmota. So get yourself an inexpensive um, 8266 or an ESP32, which is a little better quality and has more features, and then hook up your individual sensors to that. Have it run ESP home, compile the firmware, and it will just start sending things elsewhere. And they run off of a USB plug, so easy enough. Not that I know of. If so, I might buy some. But I found it very easy. The only annoying part is you end up with, unless you print yourself a case, which you can do because you have a 3D printer, you end up with these little boards with these little leads coming out of them sitting all around. Which is why I usually hide them on top of high furniture or behind things. Yeah. Yeah, but plug-in smart motion detectors, I haven't seen that many of them. That's why I suggested the solution that you construct them yourself. It also allows you to get better quality sensors than you get in a $50 item. Yeah, that isn't plug-in, isn't that battery operated? Yeah, if you'd said that, I would have talked to you about Z-Wave and Zigbee ones. Yep. Okay, then AOTech is considered top of the line. If you want to go budget, the Xiaomi Akara, which are AOTech has the best reputation out of the Z-Wave providers that I know of. Then maybe you do want to try the Aquara stuff. Also, it's less expensive, but people seem to like it. AQARA, it's Xiaomi's line of Zigbee sensors. Now, admittedly, I use their door sensors because I don't want to wire up plugs to my doors. The older ones were a bit less reliable, but I believe the newer ones are a little more. I've used their temperature sensors. I never had any trouble with them. So they have like a little button-sized temperature and humidity sensor. They also have a really good, and I have one sitting here. They do have a motion and sensor. It looks like a, what's the best way to describe it? The only reason it's sitting here is when they painted around my bathroom, they knocked it off, and I have to reattach it. It essentially it's a little sensor and then like a little tripod-like mount. So like with adhesive at the bottom. Well, that's why I didn't put it back because when they knocked it off, they made a hole in the wall, and now I have to. I may try to find another way to mount the top of it. I think I can adjust it because it uses like a little ball mount. It is actually tiny. I have one sitting right here. I just picked it up. So without the little stand that attaches to the wall or what have you with adhesive, the actual less. So it's a little tiny sensor, but it was really reliable. It has light sensing, etc., and it's not that expensive. And as I said, they work very reliably, except the one that I was using, as I said, is just offline because of the painting. When they, no, that's Zigbee. I have Zigbee, Z-Wave, and Wi-Fi. But you don't. If you have a Zigbee receiver, you do not need the hub. I have both. It has both. Yeah. Did you take my advice and use a cable? Yeah. Did you take my advice about the USB extension cord? Because that worked wonderful. The other thing I did is made sure that there were repeater devices nearby. So with both Zigbee and Z-Wave, any plug-in device will act as a repeater pretty much by itself. So I made sure that there was at least one device, not that was close enough that it could repeat to the farther away devices. So I have a one bedroom. The stick is actually at the far side of the apartment, and it was having a little trouble getting to the other side of the apartment. So in the middle of the apartment, I put a Zigbee plug. Whereas most of my other plugs are essentially the ones that can be controlled over Wi-Fi, so the ESP Home or the Tesmoda controlled ones, because I found them a little better. But I have the Zigbee plug and a Z-Wave plug in the middle of the apartment, and they essentially just do the repeating for most of it, and that solved most of my reception problems. So just get the cheapest plug you can find that can act as a repeater. Yeah, my recommendation right now, the ones that I liked, the Cough home automation ones that run ESP Home, that will integrate directly with Home Assistant. So they're already flashed. All you have to do is follow the simple instructions, and they worked. And I didn't have to, flash them or do anything special. So if you do need a plug-in module, I'm still having trouble finding one that actually goes into the wall like you wanted. But if you just want to plug it in, these are the ones. Yeah, which is a shame. And again, if there's anybody else doing it, it's coming back to you want something that's easily controllable. And this guy, as I said, this is like his side business. So he's doing it because he wants the stuff, and he's making some money off of it as well. Yeah, it's reasonably priced. Essentially, he's going to the factories that are making these ones for proprietary use. So the ones where they're part of these systems where you have to download an app and use their servers, and he's just paying them to do a run without that stuff on there. So an unbranded run of the same product with the software he designates. He has 3 basic products: Tasmoda or ESP Home, yes, Wi-Fi. No, but you were also asking about plugs. We keep switching subjects, so I may have been confused there about which one you were looking at. Yeah, if you want to. Yeah, so you can go if you want a cheap Zigbee plug. Sonoff now does Zigbee equipment, so you can get a Sonoff Zigbee plug, among other things, and that's not that expensive. I've used one of those. I just went on to Amazon and found the least expensive Zigbee plug that didn't get horrible reviews. But the Sonoff ones are decent enough. They're nothing special, but they'll do the trick. Too many things. But again, this is the challenge when you're building a system. The nice thing about Home Assistant is it can integrate all these different technologies into one seamless package, but you still have to get them all working. For example, I'm sitting here. I have a button on my desk that I press when I want to manually turn off the lights instead of going to the switch or using a voice system. And the remote is a Z-Wave remote, but it is controlling a combination of Zigbee lights and Wi-Fi controlled lights. So it does all the things, just connect to everything, and are just patched through the system. So it works. So why not? Anyway, so I guess that brings us to the end of this week. Lots of stuff to think about. How about we do this again next week? We aren't going to do this again next week? You're never going to see me again? Okay. Okay, I was worried there for a second. Well, we have, yes, but we have to remind the listeners that we're still here. They might worry. Well, I'm a bit laissez-faire about it. If you don't show up, I just go about my business and then send you an email. Why didn't you show up? But, the listeners get very emotionally involved in this. They don't know whether we're all right. So I don't want to worry them. So listeners, we will be, unless something happens, here next week. Don't worry. Write us a letter about how to solve my humidifier problem. Note to self, go look up if there's such a thing. As I said, go for an inexpensive Sonoff switch. They make plug-in modules for that. You could even possibly get a Zigbee outlet, and that would act as a repeater and be permanently wired in and solve your other problem, but I haven't seen that many Zigbee wire-in outlets that are also energy monitoring, which would be your other problem, that you want that. So, too many different features that don't always come in multiple packages. But if I see something, I will keep you in mind. So enjoy your week, and I will be back next week, hopefully with more stuff. Goodbye.